Salutations, ladies and gentlemen. The Knife Raven here, back again with another video. And I am preposterously excited today, for I have been toying with the idea for quite some time of releasing a collection video. And I've done only one of those before, and that was my Opinel collection. And my Opinel collection has not grown very much since then. However, one collection I've been focusing on a lot lately, and has easily become one of, if not my favorite, is Sheffield knives. Now, if you've been watching the channel at all, you've been noticing an increase in those. So today, I'm going to be documenting and reviewing all of my current Sheffield knives, and there will be more of these in the future, probably. So I will do updates for the collection, but this is just the beginning of a little bit of a series of collections, starting with Sheffield knives, and they will be updated in the future if a bunch of new knives are added. So, a couple quick things to just quickly say before I jump into the video. I'm not going to be reviewing knives of the household, so for example, the Rodgers sheepfoot, I'm not going to be talking about that one. That's my dad's knife. Broken knives, or defective knives, I'm not talking about them. If they don't work, if they don't actually function as knives, then they're not going to be included. And, of course, I'm not going to bring out the half dozen to a dozen Sheffield table knives that we have. So, this is just going to be folding knives to start. But in the meantime, where shall I start this little collection? I think that the best place to start is at the beginning, with my love of Sheffield knives, and it began with this. This is an Arthur Wright & Son Ettrick. This is the ebony handle option. Really nice brass liners and pins. Nickel silver bolsters. Carbon steel Wharncliffe blade, which you can see has patinaed and been sharpened a little. And a carbon steel spring. Strong pull. I'd rate it about a probably about a 6. It has certainly gotten a bit looser since when I first got it, where I would have put it closer to a 7 or an 8. And yeah, I love this knife. It's unbelievably traditional. The style of it is unbeatable. I love swaybacks, and this is one of the nicest ones I have ever had. And I really like the Ettrick pattern. You'll be seeing more of these in the future, but very nice pattern and a good way to start off this video. So I'll just put that one over there. And where shall we go next? Oh, we'll try a simple one. Here, made by Lee White of TEW, Taylor's Eyewitness, we have the Lambfoot pocket knife. This is a basic one. Stainless steel Lambfoot blade with the rounded front. Got the Eyewitness stamp. Stainless bolsters, liners, pins, and back spring. 420 HC blade. And some basic hardwood handles, which, while a little dry, do take a nice oiling. They look very nice when they've had a bit of mineral oil applied on them or some wax. But yeah, very simple little knife, comfortable in the hand. No half stops. Most Sheffield knives don't have half stops. This one's got about a 7-ish pull. I've had another one of these before that I am not including in this video because it falls under the defective classification, unfortunately. And that one, it's just one of those, that's a defect. And this is one of the nicer ones. These are more frequently seen in the Sheffield community. You see the nicer ones more often. But be warned that there is the slight chance when you're dealing with knives of this style, you will get one that's a little on the rough side. And that's putting it lightly. Where shall we go now? We shall look at my first vintage Sheffield knife. I haven't reviewed this because I often don't review my vintage knives, but this is a pipe smoker's knife with a rounded blade for scooping out the insides of a pipe. Nice little bit of snappy action on here. This is a 4 on the pull scale. It's got a bit of, by a bit I mean a whole bunch of blade wobble. Centering is really bad. Got this little pipe tool back here, which also has a lot of wobble, and it's about as about as straight as a circle, and the insides are in a desperate need of a clean. That is on me, I will say. You definitely can see how even the lower caliber Sheffield knives of today are better than some of the old Sheffield knives, which were far from perfect. This is a good example of that, but I like it. It's simple. It's a nice little thing to have in the collection. Moving on, we have another Arthur Wright. This one is the Senator pattern with the double bolsters and the rosewood handles. Again, brass pins and liners, carbon spring. Carbon steel Wharncliffe blade that I forced a patina on. I think it looks decent enough. I think that there have been better patinas out there, but it already looks very weathered and worn. This is the custom tackler blade model. They will do this for you. It is considered a custom, though. It is not their production model, but I'm happy to have gotten it. Again, this was a replacement of a knife that I got from Arthur Wright. I've told the story many times. They had a problem with their left-handed batch. One broke. I got another one. It broke. And then I got this one as my other replacement. Excuse me. And this one has turned out very well. And yeah, I'm very happy with it. Simple design, but very, very classy in its own way. Let me actually line these up properly. All right, what shall be our next one? Rodgers. This is a Joseph Rodgers, and this is in the laminate rosewood, so this is not just natural rosewood. There's some resin involved here. Again, stainless spring, mirror polished with brass liners and pins with the nickel bolster. A little hard to open this one. It's got a weak enough pull, kind of like the Senator, not the strongest, but the nail nick is rather small. And this is a hyper shiny polished blade for a relatively inexpensive cost. This is about half the cost of a new GEC and about, I'd say, 2/3 the cost of a case. And it's very similar to a case. It's a smaller knife. It's got nickel, silver, and stainless steel polished instead of carbon steel, but this is the more aggressive pointed lamb foot. I prefer these over the rounded ones, such as with the Witness, but very nice, polished, shiny knife. This looks really, really old school, very traditional, but again, it is a smaller knife, and comparing it with some of the others, say an Arthur Wright, you can see that it does have a bit of a size difference, even though the blade itself is fairly long, actually almost identical in sharpened length. You can still see that the handle on the Arthur Wright is larger. But very nice little knife. I wouldn't say it's on the higher end price. I'd say it's kind of in between budget and more premium, but closer to budget. Speaking of budget, we have one of the all-time favorites in the Sheffield community, the Barlow. This one is made by Arthur Wright. Even after wearing it in, it still has a ridiculously strong pull. Easily a 9, when it used to be probably a 10. Rosewood handles, nickel bolsters, brass pins and liners, carbon spring, and a carbon steel clip point blade. Very comfortable in the hand. Really locks up. Got a lot of grip on it. Again, very strong spring. Very traditional shape. The Barlow dates back to the late 1600s. Obadiah Barlow, and again, I don't know as much about Barlows as I'm sure many people do, but I know the basics, that it is a traditional Sheffield design, and it's been around for longer than almost any other Sheffield pocket knife. So that is quite impressive, if I must say so myself. And again, the Wrights are easily the cheapest among this entire bunch, except for, of course, the occasional vintage knife that I'll snag for a good deal. Speaking of which, we have really interesting little knife from Richards of Sheffield. This is probably, I can't date it exactly, but if I had to guess, I would put this sometime in the later 1900s. We've got half stops on the blades, stainless steel, I believe. High mirror polish. Pretty weak springs. We've got a clip point and a pen blade. And this nice black and blue acrylic material. I don't know much about this knife, so if anyone has any wisdoms to put in the comments, please let me know. This is a jackknife, 2-blade jack. It's again on the smaller size. Would fit really well into the 5th pocket, but I have seen a very similar knife made by Michael May of Sheffield with only 1 blade, a clip point, and he calls it a double bolster Barlow. So, interesting name, but yeah, little Richards knife. Very nice quality for what it is. Next up, we have another Richards. This is a camp knife, or a scout knife. I've heard both. This one's got a bit of gunk on the blade, but it's a nice spear point design. Got this synthetic imitation stag. Got a can opener, a bottle opener, and I believe there should have been another tool in here, but I think it broke. This is how I bought it, but something about it, something tells me that there should have been something else here. But interesting little knife from Richards. Certainly not my favorite Sheffield knife, but again, inexpensive, and it's an old school knife. Next up, we have the Taylor's Eyewitness Slim Barlow, also known as the Gents Clip. This is easily the thinnest knife I have in its overall style. Clip point design, stainless blade, no half stops, stainless steel spring, brass liners and pins, and buffalo horn for the handles, which is very, very shiny. Even after being scratched a little, it still has that radiant iridescence that I quite like. Again, got the stainless bolsters. This one doesn't have the file work on it, and this knife seemed to come with a problem, and again, this is a very minor defect, but you can see in between the bolster and the handle cover, there's a bit of a gap, and that is a bit unfortunate, but I've heard that natural materials can change in shape based on the temperature, so I'm not sure if that's what happened here, but that could have had something to do with it again. Very slim knife, very pretty. Definitely one I'd carry if it was a wood handle instead, because I prefer wood handles. I don't want to worry about getting them scratched, but horn is a very delicate material that does not have as much sturdiness to it as, say, a wood would. Well, next up, we have my one and only Michael May Custom. This is in bog oak, one of my favorite handle materials of all time, and brass, one of my favorite bolster materials of all time. We have the file work on the back of the spring, which continues to the front of the blade. Wharncliffe design, about a 6-pull, maybe 7, and it used to be a lot stronger, but that might have been a problem because it had to be fixed due to an error that occurred in the spring, and you know, Michael May patched it up. The spring had been snapped in half, but here we are. He put a new one in, free of charge, and polished it up really nice again. Stainless steel 420, or I believe, yes, 420 HC. Wharncliffe blade with the swedge on one side. Really nice, classic, traditional knife, and because it's a satin finish, you don't have to worry about fingerprints on this one. So really like the handle material, and this is a Wharncliffe swayback. I believe some people call them tackler knives. Next up, we have another lamb foot from Arthur Wright & Son. This one is the spalted beech model with a mirror polished carbon blade. Very nice lamb foot design. Again, that aggressive dip as opposed to the witness and the gentle curve. Nickel bolsters with brass liners and pins, carbon spring, and the stabilized spalted beechwood for the handles. Very classy looking. Almost has, again, an old school look to it. Besides the obvious traditional knife, the handles give it a sense of age, which I quite like. Weaker spring on this one for a Wright. I'd estimate about a 5, maybe a 6. And there are some minor flaws with this one, but I still really like it. This was a limited batch from Moonraker Knives UK, and I'm happy I got one. Next up, we have another pipe knife. This one which has the, I believe they call this a tamper. This one was found at an antique show, and it's in kind of poor condition. By that I mean bent blades, dull blades, stamps coming off. We have a main blade here. This one is from, let me see if I can read that. Doss and Ball, Sheffield, England. Very interesting. Again, not a brand that I have seen around today. The blade also sticks up, so there's that. And another uneven tool. Again, I keep these knives. I don't want to get rid of them because they have history behind them, and they're old pieces, and I like to keep them, but they certainly are not a Wright or a Witness. The Sheffield knives that they made back then seem to have a lot more flaws to them. But there's your pipe knife. Now this one. This one is one I've never, ever shown in a video before. And I really, really like it. This is what I like to call a bolsterless Barlow, or just a plain clip point. This is an integral. The spring is on the inside. This is one solid piece of what looks like folded. This is metal. It's cold to the touch, and it almost has what I like to affectionately call a chainmail pattern. This is a very comfortable knife. It grips very well into the hand. Modern textured handles can only come close to the levels of comfort that this handle offers. It's really, really nice in the hand. Again, the clip point blade, which is quite dull, made of carbon steel. No visual stamp left on this one besides a serial number and Sheffield. It says pattern or patent 18233, I believe. It's very hard to read, but there is some stamping left on that. Again, weak pull, but really unique handle. Not something you would ever see nowadays. An integral slip joint Barlowy type knife with a very satisfying click when it closes. And of the older knives I have, this is one of the better made ones. So, really happy to have found that. Another antique store find. Or, sorry, antique show. We are nearing the end of the video. We next up have another tackler style knife, or Wharncliffe swayback, made by Rodgers. This one is in the plain rosewood with brass liners and pins, stainless spring, and a stainless steel satin finished Wharncliffe blade. Very strong spring on this one, although not that hard to open. This one's in fairly decent condition, although there are a couple flaws with it, such as poor centering, and if I remember correctly, it has a... Oh no, the blade is actually perfect. It's an excellent blade. But yeah, the main issue is just that the grind is uneven on the blade, and that the centering is, well, leaving something to be desired. But aside from that, this is a very nice little knife. I don't carry it much, but I should probably think of bringing it around a little more. It's a very nice little example of a tackler. Now, next up, we have a Barlow. Another Barlow. This one is from Eyewitness. This is the basic model. Hardwood handles, stainless steel, brushed bolsters, liners, and spring. Half stop clip point blade with a fairly good pull. I'd say about a 6. Very nice. Again, you have that satin finished blade with the basic hardwood. Complements very well. Incredibly comfortable in the hand. This is far more of a, I'd say, square Barlow, based on the design of the bolsters, the grind of the handles, as opposed to the more rounded Arthur Wright. Again, unlike Arthur Wright, this is a stainless model and comes from the same line as this Lambfoot. So there you have Eyewitness Barlow. Now, we're not done with the Eyewitness Barlows. In fact, we have one more. This is the special one. This one has polished stainless steel for the bolsters, polished brass for the liners, polished brass for the pins, and a polished stainless steel back spring. blade, which has a half stop, also a very strong pull. This one features a stainless steel clip point blade. And again, it's in this very, very, very high gloss mirror polish. And desert ironwood for the handles, which has a very pretty grain pattern and reflects light very, very well. But it is a dark handle material, not quite ebony levels of ink black, but very much darker than rosewood or just this plain hardwood. So you can tell this is a premier knife, especially with the fine file work. And this is part of the Eyewitness Premier Collection by Mr. Lee Wright, who was trained by Michael May. So beautiful, beautiful Barlow there. We're down to our last two. We have another Ettrick. This one's in rosewood, carbon spring, brass liners and pins. About a 6 or a 7 on the pull, carbon blade. Pretty much exactly the same thing as this one, just with the rosewood. As much as I like the ebony better for its really nice color, I have to say that rosewood is just, it gives off a much more classic look to it, and I really appreciate that fact. So I really like this particular model, but it's pretty much the same thing as this one, and very well finished, I must say. And finishing the list, we have a lambfoot. Just like with the last one, this is a repeat. However, instead of being stabilized spalted beech, we have ebony, brass pins and liners, carbon spring, nickel bolsters, an immensely strong spring, easily a 9, with a carbon blade. And if you're wondering how it gained a patina so fast, I decided to try this out when enjoying last night's potato, sauerkraut, and bratwurst supper. And I must say, while the blade could be longer, this makes a great dinner knife. So, really wonderful. Starting to accumulate a patina. I think I might use this again for food, just because a half patinaed blade is far uglier than a fully patinaed blade. But again, really well made, beautiful knife. I'm a huge fan of this one. Again, made by Arthur Wright & Son. Well, there you have it, my friends. That is my impressive for me, but I'm sure pitiful compared to the collections of many, Sheffield collection. And these are easily some of my favorite knives of all time. I mean, yes, I still love Opinels. I still love my Spyderco Spy Opera. There are a lot of knives that I really enjoy, but these just capture everything about traditional knives. Something about them, they feel more old school to me than, say, a Case or a Great Eastern Cutlery or any American-made knife, or even, to an extent, German knives, Bokers and Otters. These seem more traditional to me, and I don't know what it is about them. I can't quite describe it. For example, this one. This knife, just everything about it. If you told me this was a knife that was restored and it's over 100, 200 years old, I would possibly believe you. If you just told me that this was polished up, but it was, a 200-year-old knife, I probably wouldn't argue, because this is the kind of knife people would have had 100 to 200 years ago. And because they were so good then, they're still around today. And as much as, I like knives from the US and from Germany, and they do use traditional patterns. They make Barlows, they make Stockmans, they make Trappers. Sheffield, to me, is the heart of cutlery, in pocket cutlery, I should say. And I know, I hear my American, my Canadian, my German, my Italian, my French, my Spanish, and my viewers from all over the world who have excellent knife companies. You're probably thinking, well, that's not fair. I mean, my country has this company, or it has this style of knife, and I get that. But to me, Sheffield is truly as traditional as it gets. And I love these knives. I'm going to keep collecting them. You're going to get updates on these. But in the meantime, that's my collection for now. Arthur Wright, Witness, Rodgers, Michael May, and a bunch of vintage knives. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. This has been my Sheffield collection. Thank you very much for sitting through this rather long video. And I hope to see you again in the future. So, thank you very much for watching. This has been the Sheffield collection, and this is the Knife Raven, as always, signing off. Goodbye.